We keep things rolling here on this holiday weekend on the Sports Cubicle. I'm Mike Mercado, and we have a very special treat for all you football fans. We always are just going on and on and on about the Chicago Bears. We're complaining about Matt Eberflus. We're wondering what's going on with Ryan Poles. And funny enough, we have somebody here who knows a little bit about Kevin Warren and about the Chicago Bears' next opponent, the Minnesota Vikings, to Josh Dobbs left Minnesota Vikings. He is joining us from Purple PTSD. He is Kyle Joudry. And I think I said it right the first time, but we still have a lot of episode left to mess it up. Kyle, welcome to the show, brother.
You nailed it. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So crazy season, I think, for both sides of the NFC North, right? Like we're seeing what's going on
Yeah.
with Detroit. We saw the fallout of that game between the Bears and the Lions in Justin Fields' comeback. But really fast, before we get to the Monday night matchup, your thoughts on what you've been seeing going on in the lakefront of Chicago, over at Hallis Hall, over at Soldier Field. What are the thoughts going on in Vikings country on the monsters of the Midway?
Yeah. So I think there's some fascination with Chicago. Obviously given the NFC North connection, but then, Ryan Poles was in consideration for the Vikings general manager position and ended up opting for Chicago. And instead, the Vikings end up going Coisito Fomensa, which I think most Vikings fans, I think, are pleased with. He's got his infamous competitive rebuild where he's trying to kind of thread the needle, not entirely strip things down, still be competitive while kind of rebuilding on the fly. And whether or not he'll be successful is, remains to be seen. There's been good things and bad things going on. Meanwhile, Ryan Poles has done the teardown, right? And so that's been kind of fascinating to see, just insofar as Poles could have been the dude. You know what I mean? He could have been the main guy in Minnesota and came quite close, or at least he was in consideration. The rumors were that, and the reports were that Minnesota was impressed by him, and then Chicago ended up swooping in and snagging him. So I think there's been, from the outside looking in at least, there's been some confusion at times about the decisions he's made, such as like trading for Claypool, and then even the trade recently for Montez Sweat was interesting. I mean, he's a good player, great defensive ends. He's going to help you guys. But a little bit of confusion at times and fascination, just given that kind of history there.
So I think you might have the same kind of mindset that I have when it comes to trying to get into the minds of the front office and the coaches. And I think while
Yep.
the Bears coaches might be on the hot seat, I don't think the same is going on in Minnesota. And then this Kirk Cousins injury happens, right? Justin Jefferson is out. This is a team that lost Dalvin Cook. Like, this is a nice team, all that in spite of going on. And then they
Yep.
make this trade for Dobbs, right? And I'm
Hmm.
wondering over here for the Bears, when the Montez Sweat trade happened, a lot of us assume, well, they're going to spend money. They're looking towards the future, and they're trying to not look bad after that Claypool trade, that they look scared, that they're scared
Yeah,
now to make that move, right? What was
sure.
Minnesota? What do you think their mindset, the front office, was when they made that trade to grab a QB who was maybe not winning games in Arizona, but putting up some
Hmm.
numbers? But this was a guy that was cut from Cleveland and has been around the league. What was the
Yep.
mindset going on for Viking fans, people covering the team after that move?
Yeah, I mean, Dobbs is a bit of a journeyman, as you're saying. Originally I think he was a fourth rounder from the Steelers, and it's kind of bounced around the league a little bit. Um, so with Kevin O'Connell, you basically need have like two prerequisites to be his quarterback, and if you don't have these two things, you cannot play quarterback for Kevin O'Connell. You have to have good accuracy, and you have to be really smart. And so those are kind of two key criteria for the head coach. And so I think in Dobbs, they saw somebody who has those things. And keep everyone's focused on Kirk Cousins, and that makes sense. I mean, Cousins legitimately was playing really phenomenal football. I know in week 6 you didn't see it when he went to Soldier Field. He had a poor game. The Vikings always play poor at Soldier Field. It's like a house of horrors. It's not a good spot for Minnesota to play. But Cousins have been playing excellently. But keep in mind, Nick Mullins, the primary backup, he was injured as well. He was on the IR, and then Jaron Hall ended up getting hurt in that Atlanta game, right? So the Vikings were really in a tough spot quarterback wise. And so when they swung that deal for Dobbs, it was really, I think, in the hopes of getting a veteran dude who'd been around, seen some stuff, super smart, to be the main backup to Jaron Hall, who's their 5th round rookie, who they legitimately do really like. But then Hall ends up getting injured in that first quarter against Atlanta. And, the NFL world has kind of been a little bit stunned by what Dobbs has been able to do, as well as I think, the Vikings organization itself has been a bit stunned because Dobbs has done probably far better than anyone could have anticipated. So it's the brains, it's the athleticism, and then the area he doesn't get enough credit for is the toughness. Like, dude will hang in there, make a play, try and pick up the first down with his legs. Um, Really, he's been a very nice add.
So looking into this game on Monday night, I'm looking at it at this. If you're that Minnesota offense, you're going to attack this cover two. And I feel like TJ Hawkinson, healthy or not at 80%, is going to eat up, just going to eat up. And we're going to see what happens with Jordan Addison. But I think that's where they're going to attack. And Dobbs has a chance to get out of the pocket and, again, eat up a bunch of yards, take up a bunch of this clock. But if from where you guys are watching this, how do you see the Vikings attacking the Bears, and more specifically Justin Fields? And what are you worried about if you're watching the Vikings and Bears offense? What are you worried about the Bears and Justin Fields doing to this Vikings
Yeah.
defense?
Yes, I mean, so Fields he's a really gifted player. Uh, the concern with him is always his legs, as well as, he could throw some darts as well. DJ Moore is a sneaky talented dude, and he's sneaky strong as well. Um, if you were drafting like an all NFC North team and you're in 11 personnel, DJ Moore would be one of your receivers. He's really a fantastic player. That trade from Ryan Poles, that one makes sense. Like, give your young QB a legit WR1. And so there's concern there, I think, in that he's a pretty strong dude. He's a great receiver. There's concern with Cole Kmet. In recent games, the Vikings have struggled a bit defensively to handle some size along the outside, larger wide receivers getting tight ends flexed out to the boundary. So you kind of worry a little bit. And then Mooney's really quick, and you get those few running backs who move well. Now, in week 6, Chicago found some success on the ground. You guys did a pretty all right job, and it was just kind of unfortunate that Fields got hurt. You end up going to the UDFA, Bajan. Honestly, it was a gutsy performance. So give the dude credit. Really, really gutsy effort. But with Fields, I would think they might try and spy him a little bit with Ivan Pace. Jordan Hicks, their main linebacker, is injured now, alongside of various other injuries. So they might try and spy him a bit, kind of cage him up. The run defense has come a long, long way with Brian Flores at the helm. So I would assume the emphasis is going to be on trying to limit the damage on the ground and then force Fields to do it through the air. And we'll see if they're successful or not, because it's easier said than done.
Kyle Joudry joins us here on Purple PTSD is where you can find it. We are here on the Sports Cubicle. You are doing some great work up north. And when I mean up north, not just Minnesota, but you're up north, and you are bringing the heat. And this is where I am fascinated about the whole Minnesota-Chicago connection. We just saw the Detroit and the Bears matchup where Ben Johnson might be in play for a Bears head coaching position in the next few months, right? Kevin Warren, Big Ten, we know how he handled that, but Minnesota, thoughts from a Vikings perspective, covering the team, watching the team, liking the team, working with the team, all this. Kevin Warren, been pretty silent here for the Bears, but respected. And you guys have a beautiful stadium up north, all you Vikings fans. What were the thoughts when the Bears made this out-of-house signing, this new guy in charge, and it was Kevin Warren?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as you said, US Bank Stadium is remarkable. I don't know if you've been, but it lives up to the hype. To my mind, at least, I think it's incredible. And so this was one where when you saw the name, it certainly caused Vikings folks to perk up a bit, given that connection. You mentioned the Big Ten as well. So it's always kind of interesting, the NFC North stuff, when you see kind of things happening within the North. I mean, if you're a Vikings fan, you're primarily thinking the trades that Kwesi has pulled off with NFC North teams, the draft day trades with the Lions and the Packers, and then getting Hawkinson. So those have kind of been the things that have on Vikings fans' minds when it comes to kind of this interdivision stuff. But as you said, yeah, Kevin Warren has that connection with the Vikings and seems to be well respected. So it is fascinating. And then US Bank Stadium is remarkable. So simply to note, the only real thoughts I have, not particularly satisfying, just that it is fascinating that it kind of made the leap. And I'm fascinated to see where Chicago is going here. It's very, very, there's some interesting ties between the two organizations right now.
I could do this all day, Kyle. I'm so glad we were able to hook up and talk about a fun matchup, but more importantly, make this connection. And we can make sure while there's a rivalry on the field, there doesn't have to be one off the field, and we can make sure all sides get to hear and digest awesome football knowledge. Before we let you go, where can everybody find all your work? I've been mentioning Purple PTSD, but you're all over the world. We see your work. You're doing podcasts. I was listening to it on YouTube. Give it the people in here, Chicago, all the details. Shill, my friend, shill.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking for a purple perspective, you could, head over to purpleptsd.com. That's where I do most of my writing shows up there. Vikings territory as well gets some of that writing. The podcast is Notes from the North. That is a play off the whole NFC North, but also me being Canadian. That's basically it. Notes from the North podcast, the Vikings territory, Purple PTSD. I'm on Twitter. For better or for worse, they're at Vikings Gazette. So for some reason you still like social media, you can find me on there. But otherwise, I got nothing else to plug.
All right, we got 3 quick ones then before you leave.
Sure.
Do the Vikings make the playoffs? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Is Justin Fields the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears next season?
That's a tougher one. Let me say yes.
Do the Minnesota Vikings win on Monday Night Football?
Yes, they do. Yeah, sorry.
Kyle Joudry, you're amazing, brother. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course.